Hello and welcome to the Martial Arts Teaching Tactics Podcast. I'm Chris Bean, and I'm joined by Chris Kent. Hello, Mr. Kent.
Hello, sir.
Today we're going to be talking about the 4 steps to teaching a great class. And of course, like we always say, these are our interpretation of what these steps would be. Your list very likely will look different. Use this as a guide, use this as an opportunity to check in and see, do you have something like this? Have you thought about your class in this kind of way? And what are the steps that you can take to help to improve that list for yourself, or to develop that list, or ultimately to help and improve the classes that you're teaching? So if I had to distill a great class into 4 bullet points, they would be: number 1, have a plan. Number 2, know your material. Number 3, make time for practice. And then number 4, to engage the students. I believe if I can check off each one of these items when I'm teaching a class, that class is going to lead to a great class. Again, your list is going to very likely look different than this. Just use this as an opportunity to see what points you would agree on, maybe some tweaks that you would make, and then help to develop your own checklist moving forward. So, like I said, these are a list of must-haves for myself when I'm teaching. I believe if I can check these off as I'm teaching, if I can accomplish these, my class that I'm going to be teaching is going to be a great class. So again, bullet point number 1 is to have a plan. Of course, the first step is to have a plan of action for the class. What are the specific learning targets that I want to achieve in that class? By having this clearly defined before the class starts, I will be able to effectively hit and achieve those targets. And if I'm able to get those points across, then the students are going to be able to listen to those, have time to work on those, and get those key learning targets as well. Of course, along with having a plan, I want to pre-frame my students. I want them kind of in on the plan. I want them to know what is going to happen, what to expect, the different things to be looking for as they're going through that class. What specific takeaways, what are they there for? What is it that I want them to achieve in that class? I want them, again, let them know this stuff, right? Let them know the why. Sometimes it's like, letting students peek behind the curtain. Like, these are the things I really want you to know. Just tell them. If you really want them to know them, let them know them. Say, listen, guys, we're going to work on A, B, C today because I want to do X, Y, Z. And I think you guys can improve by doing X, Y, Z. So that's what we're going to do today. Got it? Yes, sir. Boom. Go teach class. Right? It's not a mystery. Let them know. Let them know. You're not trying to shield them from it. You want them to learn it. So present it to them. Pre-frame them. Hey, these are the cool things that we're going to do today. And these cool things are going to help you in these ways. Okay, so as we're going through, think about how that works. How can you get better at doing those things? All right, let's go do it. All right, let them know. Pre-frame your students. How is that going to impact them? And not just impact them, in that class, but how is it going to impact what they're going to learn for that quarter or their belt testing or whatever it is? But what are they going to get from the class that you're about to teach? Pre-frame them. Let them know. And of course, we've talked about this before. We have several episodes on it, but have a lesson plan. Have a lesson plan. Of course, you want to have an idea. Yeah, okay, I kind of want to do this in class today. Or yeah, we need to kind of tweak this or make this better because the students are kind of lagging behind here. Okay, yep. But having an idea in your head and having something physical on a piece of paper or in a tablet or a computer or something, so much different, right? In your head, it goes one way. And in my head, I can see it. I can interact with it. I can, move things around. But he doesn't know. Master Kent doesn't know what's in my head. My staff, my leaders on the floor, they don't know what I'm thinking about. So I need to have something that they can pick up and say, oh, yeah, yeah, oh, yeah, that's a great idea. We're going to do that today too. Good. Yeah, I thought they need to work. Let them know that, right? Let them have the lesson plan. Even if that is you jot down a couple ideas before it, that would be far better than having a plan in your head that your team has no idea of what's going to happen. Right? They can't help you. They can't get things set up ahead of time. they don't necessarily know your end result. So unless you have some way of sharing that with them, that lesson plan is really the key to unlocking that for your team. Let your team know your roadmap, right? They might know the destination that you're trying to get to, but they don't know the path that you're going to take to get there. So show them the path. Give them the roadmap. Let them have and look at and ask questions and interact with that lesson plan that you have so that they can effectively help you in that class. Meshkant, do you have any further ideas on having a plan or being set up for a class?
Yeah, like you already mentioned, being able to know your specific targets and the best way to achieve those targets, letting everyone know what's going to happen, then do what you're going to tell them is going to happen. And then, of course, like you said, also have your lesson plan to know the drills and skills to help you reach that is very important. But we'll get into it later as some of the other steps or parts of teaching a great class. But that planning aspect is sometimes allowing yourself to be flexible too, because you might have that plan and structure, but some things might need more work than other things, or something might happen you didn't expect. So as good as it is to have that plan, be able to or be willing to adapt that plan and flex it as necessary. But that doesn't mean go into the class just expecting to wing it. Have the plan, try to follow it if you can, but be able to pivot and make changes to the plan that you have in place.
Yeah, I think that's a key part, and really probably something that happens not early on in your career as an instructor, right? Being able to pivot and move, I think, is a learned skill, often probably from failing and not realizing that you should have moved and pivoted earlier. So if, depending on where you are in your teaching career, you may have to learn that the hard way, or you can fall back on that time that you did learn it the hard way and then learn and pivot and move now to help make your current and future better than it was before. So again, that might be something that, again, comes with time. And oftentimes that means you have to fail in order to, or teach poor classes or bad drills or whatever it is, so you can learn when and how you do need to pivot and move to move.
And if you find yourself in those situations, having already told the students, here's what we plan to do, here's what we plan to work on, but you had to change something along the way, tell them why you did it. We plan on doing these 3 things, but we got to the first 2 and realized the second 2 needed more work. Well, we stopped to focus more on the second 2 because that's going to improve what we're doing there, which in turn is going to improve some other things. So even though you already pre-framed them, don't feel bad about not getting to all the things you listed out in your plan, but then let them know why you didn't get to them, and then make sure you reinforce the importance of doing the thing that you really didn't expect to do as much, or the thing that you thought they needed more work on.
So bullet point number 2, know your material. Now this is about you, the instructor. Know your material. And maybe it should be know their material, meaning you should know the material that you're teaching, and you need to know how that works across the belt levels, and specifically that information that you're going to teach in class, in that given class, in that class tonight, or that class tomorrow, whatever the plan is set for. So know the information you're going to teach. Be able to answer questions on the material. Think about what other tools you might need in your toolbox in order to help deliver that information to your class. As you're demonstrating the information to a class, remember the law of the lid. And remember, this is one of John Maxwell's 21 irrefutable laws of leadership. Your team can only live up to the level of expectation that you set. So as you're demonstrating that information, if you do it at a level 4, your team, your class, are likely going to be able to do those moves about a 3.5, maybe. But if you only show them what a 4 is, they think, oh, that's what I have to look like. That's it. Okay, so I'm going to get, they try their best and they can get as close as they can to that. But if you show them at a level 10, they're going to be much more likely to be able to get a lot, maybe not exactly reach it, understood, but they're going to be able to get a lot closer to that level 10 because you showed them what it should look like. And really this falls back on what do you want your students to look like? How do you want your students to be performing those moves? Because really this is all set up in the way that you demonstrate the information. If you demonstrate it at a level 4, but at testing, if they do a level 4, you're going to punish them for it. There's a problem there. If you want them to do it at a level 10, you need to present it at a level 10. Then they have something to shoot for. Yeah, they might not be able to get it yet. Understood. But if they can't even see that target or see that as an option, there's no way they can do it, right? So the law of the lid, again, just make sure that you set that bar high. Give your students something to strive for, something to reach for. Then they will be able to reach that and see that target. Oh yeah, that's how it's supposed to look. That's what I want my moves to look like. And they can try to do that, right? Remember the law of the lid as you're demonstrating your information. And then, as you're demonstrating that information, how many different ways can you explain it? How many different visuals can you bring in? Like we talked about the roundhouse kick before, and the way we demonstrate or teach or deliver that information is by having the dog pee in the fire hydrant, booger flicking kick, right? That is the roundhouse kick, and pretty well everybody in their head, they get an image of what that looks like and how to kind of work their body through that motion. Those visuals are very helpful in order to connect that information to the students, right? As they do that roundhouse kick, they can see the dog peeing on the fire hydrant. They can imagine the feeling of trying to flick the booger off their foot to do that roundhouse kick. That really is going to allow them to interact with those movements a lot differently than just say, okay, you do this with your body, you do this with your body. Right? So have a range of different visual images that you help to, that help you demonstrate this information to your class. And then of course, you want to play to the lowest common denominator. So if you have someone in your class that is like you can show them or even verbally sort of explain the move and they get it, no problem, awesome. That's probably not how everybody else in class gets it. So you want to try to, as you're demonstrating or explaining these movements, do it to where the person at the lowest level can understand what you're talking about. Make it as simple and as basic as you can, using those images so they can kind of help to see what that looks like. Right? And of course, as you're talking about demonstrating and explaining, make sure you try to cover as many learning styles as you can as you're demonstrating that information. Of course, that helps so that everybody in your class is able to pick up and grasp and understand how to do those movements.
And the better you know the material you're teaching, the easier it is to do some of those things. If it's a move you've done a handful of times and you have to teach to somebody else, you might not have those extra tools or tips or word pictures you can paint. But knowing what you're doing and having a deep understanding of the technique is going to make it easier for you to teach because you're familiar with it. You've done it plenty of times and you know how it works. You know the different ways you can describe what you're doing or show what you're doing and really convey the knowledge that you have. So again, that's how knowing your material is important to be able to demonstrate and show off the technique in different ways.
Along with this, what are the goals that you have for your students? Yes, of course, you want them to make it to their next belt test. Okay, but along the way, what is the information that you want them to attain? What are the goals that you have set for them or that potentially they have set for themselves? And then how can you help them to achieve those goals? Right? That all is encompassed in knowing your material and also really knowing your students. How does this person learn? How, as you approach that person, what have you done in the past that has helped that person had those moves click, right? And then as you go to that person, try to use those same things, right? Or work off of that same familiar ground. And then as you go to this other person, this person learns very good in an audio type way. So you might have to, after you explain it, go to that person and just kind of, tweaks, adjust some of the verbiage or something just to make sure, now I got it, awesome. Or you have the kinesthetic type person, you have to go to that person and try to help them move through the motion so that their body really can kind of understand the movement, how it works, and how their body is supposed to be moving to do those moves. All of that is encompassed in knowing your material and then also knowing your students. Know your audience that you're talking to, that you're working with, that you're interacting with. Did you have anything else to add to that one? No? Okay, great. So bullet point number 3, make time for practice. Seems easy, seems basic. But if you have a class that is packed with brand new information and leave little to no time to work on that information, how can your students be expected to learn or remember or to recall any of that? Right? They need time to go over those moves. Give them time to work through this information. Okay, that's going to be key for the success of your students. Have a variety of different drills and skills to help to reinforce both old and new information, right? You don't want to continue to do the same drill over and over and over again. Sure, it might be fun and exciting the first couple times, and it might work really good. But what are some variations of that? Or different drills entirely that still work on the same skill? Be creative. Think outside the box. Let your students try. Maybe you have a couple ideas you're working on, trying to develop some new different drills. Okay, hey, guys, let's try this. And then, as we talked about before, great, cool, that worked. Add it to the future lessons plan. Or no, that didn't work. Okay, cross that off the list. We'll go back. Maybe I'll work on that a little bit later. But have a variety of different drills for your students to do that will really help to keep them engaged in the class and really being active in their training and in your classes as well. Of course, you want to maintain their older material as well. If you're just teaching new information, you give little to no time to work on that maintenance for the older material, then it's not going to be there when they test on it, or it's not going to be there if they had to defend themselves with one of those older backlog type material. So give time to review that information in your classes, specifically if they're are going to be testing on it, or if they need to know it later on down the road. If it's something you've done in the past, just brush up on it. Do it once or twice in your class and then move on, right? They don't need to spend the entire class on it. It's old. They've already done it. And unless you have some key insights to give them or they need to work on it, let them do it a handful of times. Okay, great. Good. Let's move on now. All right? Just don't neglect the information that they've done before. Give them time to practice this. Now, of course, I say make time for practice in your class, because by now, hopefully, you realize that the number or maybe the percentage of students that practice outside of your class is not very high. So by letting them have that time, that opportunity to work on those things in your class, will greatly help them. And then by chance, if they do get times to practice it outside of your class, then they know that material so much better because they did it in class, 8 times or 15 times or whatever it is. By the time they're out of your class, they just touch up on it a couple times. Okay, great. Yep, I'm good. I'll move back into class. Versus you do it 1 or 2 times in class, then they get home and they're trying to remember exactly how and how does my body move? How do I do that move? And then they end up practicing it wrong, or they just don't practice it at all because they don't know it well enough. Then they come back to your class, the whole thing. So give them time to practice it in your class. Let them, be pretty well up to speed on it before the class is over. That way, if they get a chance to practice it outside of class, they're all the better for it. Now, with this step, try to be able to take a snapshot of your class. Realize what the students are excelling at and what they need more time to focus on. And then spend some more time focusing on those things that they need to work on, right? And this is about kind of going back to the last one of knowing your material and knowing your students, right? If you are teaching classes and you are frequently working with those people, you might know that Johnny needs extra practice on his form. Okay, so as everybody else is doing their stuff, maybe everybody else is doing self-defense, Johnny excels at self-defense, so give him an opportunity to practice his forms during that time. Give him some feedback on that, right? Let him have some in-class practice time on that. Or everybody in your classes, I'm sure, anybody in my class, I'm sure, and I'm sure Master Kent would agree, everybody could use extra practice on their forms. So, all right, listen, guys, we're going to spend some time practicing your forms. As you do this, I want you to focus on X, Y, Z, A, B, C. Give them something specific to focus on, like we talked about in the past. And then they work on that. They work on that. That will help to bring up those different aspects of their training that maybe aren't as good as some other ones. Try to level the playing field so everybody is pretty good on. Of course, you're going to still have everybody's going to excel at one or two different things, but try to bring up their lower qualities so they're a little bit closer to their top or higher achieving qualities.
You touched on it already, but a lot of these things do overlap, such as knowing your material, engaging your students, working with them, making things work together. And this time for practice, again, goes back to the first step or first aspect of a really good class and having the plan. So, again, have that plan, incorporate your practice time into your plan. That way, when it comes time to get to review, you don't have to make time for it. It's already there. I mean, worst comes to worst, you have extra practice time. Maybe you don't think they need it, or maybe you've already practiced for 15 minutes. You don't need another extra 10 minutes. You can throw another drill in there, play a game, go and review old material, work on your maintenance. So making the time to practice, having that part of your plan is beneficial on many levels, whether it be to help you practice a new material, to review old material, or to be able to kind of deepen your connection to your students by doing other things. But again, all of this kind of works together in these different steps in making this class the best class or a great class for you to teach.
So moving from 3 to 4, last one on the list, engage the students. Get your students involved in your material. Like we talked about in the last one, they need to be up, moving through their information. Give them time to work on that stuff. And then have the supporting elements that they need to reach those learning targets, right? Give them the feedback that's going to help them to reach those learning targets, right? We talked about in the first step, hey, listen, pre-frame them, let them know these are the things we want to cover. Okay, then they go through the whole class, and then along the way, you want to engage them, right? Give them the feedback. Hey, listen, these are the things that you specifically, I want you to be working on. These are the areas that I think you can improve upon, right? Let them know one-on-one. I mean, if it's a whole belt group, okay, fine, let them know, the whole belt group. I think you guys need to work on this. Or, hey, John, I think you can improve by, sinking your hips into this move. Let's see it. Wow, that was amazing. Good job. High five. Boom. Right? Let them know. Let them know how they're doing is, like you have these learning targets, but if you don't, if you set up the learning targets, all right, guys, listen, today I want to work on your hip movement in your basic hand and foot techniques. All right, and then you give them some different ways to kind of achieve those things, but you don't actually tell them how close they are to reaching or hitting that target. They're working on it. They might be improving, but they don't know exactly where their shot was, right? How close it was to the bullseye. Right? So let them know, hey, listen, it was right there. Tweak this little thing and you'll have it excellent. Let's see it. Boom. That's it right there. Awesome. Good job. Give them nucks, something, whatever. But let them know how close they are to achieving those targets. And having them, and getting them set up and having them and giving them an idea of what it is, great. That gives them something to shoot for. But if they're just shooting for those things and they don't know how close their shot is, that makes it hard for them to hit the target, right? So give them the feedback so they can know specifically, pinpoint where they are on that target and how close they are to reaching that bullseye, or perhaps how far away they are from reaching that bullseye. And then again, we talked about, this was, I think, episode number 1, but keep the mindset of the best martial arts instructor in the world. Again, we talked about what does that mean to you? What qualities would that person possess? And how close are you to achieving those things? What things can you incorporate into your everyday teaching? How can you be better? And not just better for you, but better for your students. Remember, you want to keep a student-first mindset. And in doing so, you want to bring yourself up. Right? This, again, the law of the lid. I frequently fall back to this one. It's the law of the lid. The higher you are as an instructor, the higher the quality of your students are going to be. Right? Because if your lid is low, your students can't grow. You want to make your lid as high as possible so that your students can grow as high as possible. Right? So keep a student-first mindset, and in doing so, also you want to be your version of the best martial arts instructor in the world. Animated, genuine, interact with your students, right? All of those different things. And we talked about this, but give them feedback. Let them know how they're doing. Not just, good job. Hey, that was pretty good. Yeah, that's close, right? Let them know, right? Hey, that was really good. I think if we change this or tweak this, it would be even better. Let's see it. Awesome. We talked about this. Was an early one. We talked about praise, correct praise. You want to have that sandwich, right? Give them a praise. Hey, that was really good. Don't use the term but, right? That was really good, but no good. That was really good, and I think it could be even better if we changed this. Let's try it. Wow, that was so much better. Good job, right on. All right, so don't use the term but. Nobody wants to be a but. And, or as well, or tweak, or change, or something like that. All much better than using than using but. Give them feedback, and again, not just good job. Hey, that was really close. Nice try. Let them know specifically what they can do or what you think they can do to be improving on those movements. Because if you don't tell them, if you don't let them know specifically, they don't know. They can't read your mind. They don't know what you're thinking. They don't know how that was close. Okay, what can I do to make it even better? I don't know. Just try this. No, that's not good enough. Let them know specifically this. Try this. And if that doesn't work, okay, then try this, right? Have some backups, but give them some specifics on your feedback that you deliver to them, right? Of course, you have to be careful. Don't give them, hey, this was wrong and this and this and this. Pick one thing. Pick one overarching thing that can improve them. Okay, great, good. Then you move down the list, on subsequent classes, but be specific with your feedback. Of course, as the class is ending or right at the very end of class, reframe the class. Talk about what you did in that class. Talk about why you did the different things that you did. All those things that you pre-frame them on, let them know that, hey, we did all those things. We did this, and it helped this. And we did that, and it helped that other thing, right? So you pre-frame them before the class or right in the beginning of class. You do the class, then you reframe the class, right? So they're getting that information 3 times, at bare minimum. And then hopefully if you can try to talk about the different drills and skills that you're doing along the way, even better. But reframe it. Like, again, just review the different things you did in that class. That'll help bring it to their mind at the very end as they're getting ready to leave. If they're making their notes in their journal, great. That gives them something to focus on as they do that. Have word pictures to help visualize, right? This would be a great time if you use a word picture in your class. Talk about that again, right? Just so they can get an opportunity to revisualize what that word picture was. Remember the roundhouse kick? Remember how did we do that? Oh yeah, it's a dog peeing on the fire hydrant, booger flicking kick. Right, awesome, right? Yep. Then that gives them another snapshot of what that looks like in their head as they leave for the day. Right? Present that information again right before they leave, just to help keep it fresh in their brain right before they leave. Engaging the students. Or do you have anything that you would add to that?
Sure. I mean, I don't know if we've talked about it necessarily on our podcast, but we want to make sure that we're engaging each and every student. So having a personal touch with that student during the class, whether it be using their name or asking about their day or an appropriate physical touch when we go over to them, touch their shoulder, give them a high five, give them knucks or something, engage them and make them feel like you actually genuinely are interested in their life and their training, to make it more than just you teaching the class as a whole, but make them feel like you actually care about them. And that's gonna help them buy into what you're doing and really feed into your great class that you're about to teach.
If you can run classes, and again, for me, this is my list. This is a list that I like to be able to check off as the class goes. But if I can run a class and keep those things in check, then I know my students are going to greatly benefit from those lessons. Because I have a plan, I know my material, I know my students, I make time for practice, and I engage my students. If I can check those things off, the students are going to leave better than they were when they came to me. Not just on, in general, they came to me at, as a white belt and then they left at whatever belt, but in that specific class, they're going to be better because they showed up to that class. I know because I was able to go through this list. I checked those boxes. I made time for all of that stuff. your list, again, will very likely be different than this. Understood, no problem. Just use this as an idea generator. Think about some different things that you would like in your class. Maybe you would only have 2 check marks. Great. Maybe you have 7. Okay, fine. Whatever it is. But think about those things. Distill your class into, maybe these are the things I want to avoid happening, and these are the things I want to have happen, and what things do you need to do in order to ensure those things happen, right? Make a list. And then have some supporting elements for that list as well. Okay, like we talked about, engage a student. Okay, that has some feedback involved. That has, the reframing, all those different things that have, your big bullet point. And then what is inside of that bullet point? What are the sub points that help to make up that bigger bullet point? And then as you build your checklist, go out and teach the class. As you're teaching a class, keep that checklist in mind. Do those things. Right? Maybe you adjust it, you tweak it along the way, whatever it is, fine. But strive for that. And again, don't do this for selfishly so that you can teach great classes and your students aren't, the students are the part. That's why you show up to work, is for your students. So make sure all of the things on your checklist benefit your students. Right? I don't know why you would have things on your checklist that wouldn't benefit them, but just make sure that you're keeping the students' interest, the students' needs, their lessons, their learning at the heart of what it is that you're doing, right? Because that is why you are there. You're there to help them learn and grow and be better. So as you make that checklist, think about ways that you can help your students learn and grow and be better. I think that's a good recap from me, sir.
Yes, sir. Nice reframing of our lesson here.
Yes, sir. And if you want to reach out to us, you can find us on any of the socials at MA Teaching Tactics. MA, of course, for martial arts. We're on Facebook and Reddit and Instagram and Twitter, all those different places. Again, MA Teaching Tactics. Anywhere where podcasts are, you can find us, of course, by Martial Arts Teaching Tactics. On YouTube as well, we have videos for all these podcasts up there, just in case you're curious what we actually look like. We have faces. We're not just floating heads. So again, check us out on there if you feel so apt to message us or write us something. We respond to all of those. If you have ideas for episodes you want to listen to in the future, or perhaps some different problems or struggles that you're having right now, we'll be more than happy to add that into a podcast so that we can help to grow you along the way. Until next time, I'm Chris Bean.
And I'm Chris Kent.